Joachim, good to see you again. We first met just over 3 years ago in Hanover when you invited me to see you at Prussen Electric. And we've had various conversations, mostly about our respective roles in the Baraka project in Abu Dhabi, until, of course, you joined as CEO of Fennovoima in June last year. I've always been impressed by your passion for the nuclear industry and also your passion and warmth and respect towards the people that you've worked with. It really struck me from the first time we met and every time we've spoken. So, and you've gone through quite a big move yourself during a period of the pandemic crisis. I just wondered if you could tell me, what was it like moving to a new country, Finland, during the crisis? And what impact has that had on your start to your working life there?
Yeah, Tim, good to see you also from my side. And yes, time flies. It is already a couple of years ago since we met, as you correctly say. So good to see you again here. And as a matter of fact, things have evolved and changed quite significantly in the last year. For me personally, and of course, I guess for all of us with facing the crisis as a COVID-19 challenge we are all facing, and as you ask, how did I cope with that moving in this during this time to into a new position, into a new country, into a different culture. Well, I have to say I knew Finland, of course, from my former life to some extent, not in the depths I know it now, of course. But I used to say when I went to Finland in May last year, I'm saying the Finns, very warm-hearted people, they locked me away for 2 weeks as a welcome gift. That is, of course, not true. That was just safety and security. But I guess this very well describes how you feel. You come into a new country, you live start living in a new environment. You after being locked down and locked away, you start with your assignment. You encounter a company which is almost empty because start working remotely. I guess I still haven't met each and everybody of Fennovoima staff yet personally, and I think that very well describes already the basics and principles and challenges you have professional wise. But of course, also personal-wise, start organizing your life in a completely new frame and setup and environment with a challenging task. I guess this is what in very few words, in principle, describes the first impression I had and I encountered last year.
Yeah, wow! I can really only imagine what it must be like to not only move country, but also to be taking on such a responsible position when the opportunity to meet people is so limited. Thinking of daunting prospects, I think we both started in our postgraduate jobs at a similar time, many decades ago, I fear. But can you maybe describe what was your original reason that attracted you to the nuclear industry, and what your first impressions were those years ago?
Well, as you very correctly say, and as everybody can see, yes, we have already some years on the clock in nuclear business or in business and in life. And I started my career. I've been now for more than 30 years in the nuclear business with Siemens KWU in Germany. So the German these days designer, EPC contractor, commissioner, erector of all German nuclear power plants. And I guess first I may say, of course, I was not solely focused on nuclear, on getting nuclear expertise. It was more the attraction of the job description, the context, and the package, to say so. Siemens KWU at these days offered me, of course, as a starter, just graduated from university. Of course, your professional experience is not strongly developed. How can it? But it was definitely a very attractive opportunity. And very fast, I was involved in, first of all, very exciting, large projects at these days on one hand side. And on the other hand side, I was very soon also impressed by, let's say, what it means, nuclear technology and nuclear industry. And let's say the engineering challenge, the accuracy, the carefulness of thinking as a nuclear engineer and learning to think as a nuclear engineer was quite striking and impressive for me. What it means, what is quality. I guess many people are not fully aware what that means. And if you say today, nuclear is like oil and gas, for example, I heard that very often. No, it's not. So I guess this is something you can only learn from scratch. And I guess it is also on us, on our task, to transport that into our business, into our industry, to share that with our colleagues, with younger people, because we have the responsibility, in my eyes, to share this vast knowledge we were able to capture also with our successors.
Yeah, it's an industry that really prides itself on that sharing of knowledge. And I came in as an outsider some years ago to the nuclear industry and was really struck by that difference. You've worked internationally. We first met in our involvement with the nuclear industry in the UAE. What would you say after your first 6 months or so, what would you say are your first impressions of any differences between the Finnish nuclear industry and your past experience internationally, and obviously mainly in Germany?
Well, I mean, my international experience, as you know, I've lived roughly 11 years abroad, basically in Spain and Brazil, and some other assignments in shorter term. So I may say I have a quite good view on international nuclear industry. And coming back to your question, what makes maybe describes the Finnish or what makes it different? In principle, every country has its own nuclear and regulatory environment and ecosystem, to say so, and this strongly characterizes also the maturity of the nuclear industry in each country. And of course, Finland is a very mature country in terms of nuclear. It operates for many years, different kind of technologies. It has, as the only country in the world, a final waste repository, Posiva, for spent fuel. It counts on new build project. OL 3 is about to become finally ready for operation. Hanhikivi 1, our project, we still need some years, but that clearly shows that Finland is counting on nuclear. Finland is, of course, having a strong challenge in terms of getting rid of CO2 emission. So this can be to some extent only replaced by nuclear because renewables is limited to large extent. Finland has a very mature regulator, a very experienced regulator, and Finland's nuclear fleet, I guess one may say, is highly recognized for highest availability and performance in operation. So I guess this is what describes Finland in a nutshell. It is probably in the first quartile in Warnow thinking in terms of operation, and this of course includes safety.
Yeah, a truly well-respected industry. Is there anything that surprised you in the first 6 months, maybe about your team or about the environment? What might have surprised you in the first 6 months?
I mean, I have everyday surprises, but I guess this is not what you want to know. What is surprising, or what was surprising for me? Maybe the most surprising thing is that how positively nuclear is recognized and received in public perception and in Finland. We see that with our plant, our site, Hanhikivi. I try to be there as often as possible. The perception there from the municipalities, from the surrounding, is tremendous, is outstanding. We have polls saying where more than 70% are in favor of nuclear. This does not only affect our environment in Hanhikivi and Pyhäjoki, where we built the plant. I guess Finnish society is very, let's say, logic when it comes to nuclear. It is not emotional like we in Germany, for example. So public perception and support of nuclear is extremely high. That was for me, coming from Germany, of course, a very big surprise. You know the situation in Germany, and I used to say when I was with Preußen Elektra, even our plants, or the Preußen Elektra plants in the surrounding and the municipalities, we were not always very warmly received and happily received. And I used to say, except one day per year when we paid the income taxes to the municipality. But seriously, in a nutshell, I think the most positive impression is how positively nuclear is received in Finland, and not stigmatized like something evil, to say so.
Yeah. Now, I often do when I travel, and until this past year, I travel quite a lot with my work. I do the taxi test, and I ask get in a conversation with the taxi driver, and they usually ask what I do for a living, or why I'm here. And of course, the conversation comes around to nuclear. And you can read the response of different countries, as you say, whether it's emotionally positive or emotionally negative, or just extremely logical. This is a great source of low carbon energy. Let's look at it logically like that rather than emotionally. So I can really understand what you're saying there. The nuclear industry prides itself on the sharing, as we mentioned earlier, and learning from that experience that it's gained over the years through the sharing of experience. What lessons would you like to share with the wider nuclear industry from this project, from what you've seen in the first 6 months?
I mean, you mentioned in my eyes two things. First, the attitude in principle and general of the nuclear industry to share expertise and knowledge. I think that is important really to underline. And this for the operators has very much to do with WANO, which is the World Nuclear Association of Nuclear Operators, where and of course INPO and others, but where knowledge and expertise is shared and multiplied in order to really focus on safety. I guess this is very, very different compared to any other industry. And that is also for people coming to the nuclear industry, first of all, difficult to understand that we share knowledge, that this is one of our principles, to share knowledge for safety purpose and for safety reason, and not prevailing, let's say, competitive perspectives in this regard. And I mean, what I could share from my first 6 months. Of course, I guess this is very typical for any new build project or for any large scale project, that nowadays executing such a project is, I guess, much more challenging than it was in the past. If you imagine, I mean, have a look on the industry in the 70s, in the 80s. Many plants were built all over the world in parallel. A huge industry, huge expertise. We lost this capability to some extent, at least in the Western world, and we painfully learn how to come back. Not still there to large extent, but what I of course, and I guess this is to some extent a no-brainer. What I would share. I mean, one thing is the regulatory environment. Extremely important to adapt as a contractor to the regulatory environment you are in. Extremely important, success critical. And if you can't cope, if you cannot adapt and adopt to the existing ecosystem, I used to call it, you will face problems in your project. This is definitely one point. And another experience, of course, this goes in line to some extent with the ability to adapt and adopt, to have a adapted supply chain in place, so that you are able to deliver in the country you want to build the plant. So I think these are two topics and two issues I'm happily sharing, and of course again another project management principle, maybe be as lean and as effective as possible. And any interface in level 1 or level 2 becomes is multiplied by 10 in a different level of the schedule. Get rid of interfaces, focus on the must-be's and not on the nice-to-haves. Such a huge project, extremely difficult otherwise to execute. We see that in many examples.
Yeah. How do you feel? I came across an example recently of a very old project from a very famous cathedral in the UK, St Paul's Cathedral in London. And this example talks about that project. It's many hundreds of years ago, a completely different world to the one we live in now. But if you return to these projects of many centuries ago, one's focus is not at all on whether they were on budget or whether they were on time and things like that. In today's world, that seems all important. You yourself referred to OL3 and its delays that have been going on for years now. How do you feel it's best to combine the safety approach of nuclear, which is imperative, with today's modern world that projects should always be on time and on budget? Could you reflect on those challenges?
Yes, this is of course a very important topic, Tim, you are raising, because and then this is maybe also one of the main reasons why we, among other influences, suffer such severe impact, because we have a huge appetite for information, and many different stakeholders have a huge appetite of information. So you have to have a lot of processes in place. And again, are these processes nice to have, or are they a must be? One question. This is for sure one indicator who influences projects. Another indicator, of course, also is the maturity of designs and technologies and the level of acceptance by the regulator. And maybe the basic principle, what you want to say is, in former times we have focused on the product. I guess we have also done that in the 70s and in the 80s when we built many power plants in parallel. And nowadays we are focusing on the process. And very often the process does not match with real life. And then these inconsistencies combined with many ingredients, licensing, technology, supply chain, etc., cause a very complex project situation, and at the end lead to significant or less significant delay or other influences and impact.
Yeah. I think that those delays are often mentioned when the role of the nuclear industry in terms of playing a role with regards to reducing carbon emissions, for example, is talked about. Delays and cost overruns are often referred to as reasons against. What is your view about the future of the nuclear industry and nuclear energy in particular, both in Finland, but also internationally?
I see two dimensions, Tim. One dimension is, of course, is nuclear, in my eyes, needed or not? The answer might be simple from my side and easy to understand. My answer definitely is yes, we still need nuclear energy for many, many years, because we are still not able to store renewable energy in sufficient scale to acknowledge it as base load. And therefore, combined with the desire to reduce CO2 emission and the need to reduce CO2 emission, I, as an engineer, don't see any other option than that. That is one dimension. And the other dimension, of course, is except some few countries who never stopped building, China, Korea, South Korea, of course, Russia, all other, to large extent, broke the chain and lost large capabilities and strong capabilities, because there was too much time between the last plant built and then the first later on constructed again. So the ability to deliver the supply chain, the skills and capabilities of this, the OEMs or any other suppliers, very limited, had to be re-established, had to be created to some extent. So I think that these are the dimensions which lead to the situation we are in today.
Okay, and I guess just finally, staffing the nuclear industry globally is a passion of ours, and ensuring that the right people are on the right projects. Why would you say people that are watching this interview or listening to this interview, why should they consider the Fennovoima project as one they might be interested in?
Well, I hope they consider, because this is a huge project. I mean, this is a multi-billion euro project with a considerable schedule and a very exciting challenge. I mean, to whomever and whenever you have executed a project and you like projects. Of course, you have to like it. Then this is definitely the place to be. I mean, the project itself, the purpose of the project are very exciting. The conditions we are offering here, we have a very international staff. We have more than 20 nations in Fennovoima, within Fennovoima. We are a young organization, a growing organization. We are maturing. Even recognized by Stuck that we value quality. So we are on our way to become an intelligent licensee. And we have a lot of course, interesting perspectives. I mean, what we said, we hope to obtain a construction license end of this year. So next year, construction, we have already a lot of things ongoing on site. We'll start supply chain, tremendous and very exciting and interesting part of the project. The engineering part. So we can offer a very broad scale of very exciting activities. So I guess if not yet attracted, now you should be attracted. I guess such a project offers a lot of interesting, exciting opportunities.
Yeah, thank you, Joachim. That's a really good insight, both into the nuclear industry in Finland and internationally, and also into your project at Fennovoima. Thank you very much for spending time with us today.
Tim, it was a pleasure. always, and best to you. Stay safe. Thank you.
Thank you.